podcast. My name is Naz. Let's talk about Adesanya versus Costa. Now, I know what you're going to say. This guy's just going to talk about how big of a fight it is and blah, blah, blah. And yes, it's a major fight. Massive in the middleweight division, obviously, because it's for the title. We got two contrasting styles in the striking department. We got one person who's going to be a sniper in the counter punching. We got someone that's not going to stop moving forward in Costa. But there's a couple things that I really wanted to touch on when it comes to this fight. And that's that even when I talk to people who I respect their opinion when it comes to MMA, you know, I listen to these people. I know that they've seen fights. I know that they've watched fights for a long time. You know, I respect their opinion. But you know what it is? Is that over the years of watching MMA, one thing that you learn is that every time people fight, no matter what the person's resume is, there's going to be a perception factor that comes in every sport. You know, you look at some of the top NBA players, you look at them physically and you're like, wow, this is a powerhouse. You know, you look at Zion, he's done some spectacular stuff in the NBA, but is his body really made for fighting? I mean, for playing basketball, see, fighting's on my mind, but for playing basketball, is Zion made to play basketball? Now, let's look at these two fighters in Adesanya and Costa. A lot of people, just by looking at them, they look at Costa and they go, wow, look at him. He's chiseled, bodied up. And then we look at Adesanya, who's a lot more slender in frame, very tall, lanky. You know, I was watching the Creed movies again. And you look at the main characters, you look at all the villains or whatever he faces. Man, they're all jacked. They don't look like real fighters. Paulo Costa, as dangerous as he is, he's not a body type that we see in MMA that much. We've seen it in the past with fighters like Tyron Woodley, where they've had to reserve their tank, pick and choose their moments in the fight, when to explode. You know, what I'm trying to say is that when I talk to most people, it seems like they think it's going to be a landslide victory for Paulo Costa. Now, assuming that you're listening to this podcast, that you're a hardcore fan of MMA, you're just trying to soak up all the media. You know for a fact that Adesanya is decorated in striking. He's amazing in MMA. He's done some spectacular stuff. But this is exactly what Adesanya has been talking about all week. You look at all the videos that have come out. He's like, yeah, I don't like this guy, but from a visual standpoint, for the casual fans, I want them to see this. I want them to see him fighting a physical specimen like Paulo Costa. She's got a good point there, because a lot of people, you know, when I first heard that, when I first heard him say something like that, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, look at your resume, man. Like, we all know that you're something special. But then when you got all these casual fans watching, they just look at the physical features and they determine what the fight is going to look like. They don't take into account that some of the best strikers in the world have reach advantages that come from being slender in frame. You know, we see some of the best strikers being a lot taller, sometimes a lot more lanky, just so they have that reach advantage. You know, not to say that Paulo Costa doesn't have a chance. It's just by... I just don't want to diminish what Adesanya brings. I just want to get that out there, you know. I just want to talk about it before having any assumptions on what Adesanya has done, what he brings to the table. But let's look at Paulo Costa. Let's look at his past fights. He fought Johnny Hendricks. He won that in the second round in a KO. Then he fought Hall. He won that in the second round, TKO. And then he went to decision with Yoel Romero. You know, I was watching Robin Black, and he brought up just to go on a side point. You know, when he faced Hall, Hall threw a spinning kick to Costa. Costa just embraced. He kind of went like he forced himself not to suck in his stomach when he got kicked there. He kind of flexed his abs, and it just shows the type of fighter that he is. Marching forward, not worried about getting knocked out, not worried about taking a weird punch. Just marching forward. And this is the craziest thing about him. You know, I talked about his physicality and how I talked about how he looks, and not to make that a major thing, but for a guy his size, for having the muscle definition that he has, his cardio is incredible. That was really showcased in the Romero fight. Y'all remember that he walked down Yoel Romero. Nobody does that. Yoel Romero is a perfect example of this as well, from the opposite side that we've seen from people with his body type. People that like to take breaks, do the old water spilled everywhere trick where one of the cornermen dumps a bucket of water on top of you. They got to clean it up. Taking every advantage that he can, trying to slow down the fight, and exploding. But Costa is different. Costa is different. He just walks you down. He's got that cardio. It's scary at sometimes when a guy his size is coming at you and he's taking shots. But I've noticed he'll take a couple of shots just to give you one. And people like this that walk you down, they don't really show the striking dynamic that he shows in terms of throwing to the body, throwing to the head, you know, mixing it up. And it's just it's weird to see. It's weird to see the type of, you know, I'm looking at a photo of him right now. Just a physical specimen, one of the greatest bodies in MMA, period. And this guy walks people down. Just walks them down. Now, let's go to Adesanya's record. Man, what this guy has done in the short amount of time, becoming the champion that he is, and taking on the fights that he's had. He fought Kelvin Gastelum, took him to a decision, all 5 rounds. That was a crazy fight. Back and forth. And when Adesanya came in the last round and he said, "I'm ready to die for this," it came out and he pushed just a little bit further than Gastelum. Pushed that extra inch and he clearly won that fight. Great fight overall. Back and forth. And it shows how amazing Kelvin Gastelum is. Kelvin Gastelum is no joke. A lot of people put Kelvin Gastelum in low regard. Man, I would put Kelvin Gastelum's skills up there. His boxing ability, some of the combinations that he throws are crisp. Actually, a lot of them are. His boxing capability is second to none. I think he's one of the best boxers in MMA. But then after that fight, after that war, he fought Whitaker. He won. Second round, KO. That was a crazy fight too. The amount of fanfare for that one. And everybody going nuts, the pressure that he was under. And then after that, to call out the boogeyman in Yoel Romero and win a fight against him, which a lot of people are saying was a lackluster fight. When it comes to these kind of fights, it takes two to tango. You can't just put the blame on one person not to put the action on. Adesanya throughout that whole fight had to worry about the explosive capabilities of Yoel Romero. He's always dangerous. I still see that Weidman knockout replaying in my head. That shows you how dangerous this guy is. And that's the type of care that Adesanya has to show when facing a man like that. It reminds me of the Tyron Woodley and Wonderboy fights. At some points you gotta look at who you're fighting. You're fighting one of the most capable fighters in the world, the man who does not grow, the athletic ability that he shows just to pounce on you, and that goes to Yoel Romero's style as well. He kind of lulls you. Sometimes you just see mouth wide open, shaking his head. You're like, is this guy still here? Is he good? And then, boom, he just explodes with something crazy. So let's see how these two stack up. This is one of those fights that they say someone's has got to go. Only the second time in UFC history where two undefeated fighters have gone against each other. Adesanya, fighting out of New Zealand, born in Nigeria. Paulo Costa, born in Brazil. This is a big advantage for Adesanya when it comes to the height. He's 6'4". Paulo Costa 6'1". People forget how tall Adesanya is. When people called out Brock Lesnar, I mean, when he called out John Jones, people are laughing at him, going like, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? You're way too small for that. And then I remember when Brendan Schaub interviewed Adesanya, and when they were standing next to each other, Adesanya was almost as tall as him. Brendan Schaub fought in the heavyweight division. He's 6'4". He's a big guy. Also, when he's got that height advantage, he also gets that reach advantage of 80 inches. Paulo Costa's got 72. And then you look at the TKO, KO percentage, the advantage goes to Costa, but he's got less fights in the UFC. So TKO percentages, 92% for Costa and 78% for Adesanya. Paulo Costa having that submission 8%. Adesanya 22% going to decision. And then the significant strikes thrown, it's a lot higher for Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa, that goes exactly to the point that I was just talking about. This guy just walks you down. The significant strikes thrown per minute is 8. And Adesanya is 3. Adesanya, a lot more calculated. He's going to watch you, see what you react to. He's going to throw a lot more feints. He loves throwing those feints just to see what you're going to react to. And then he puts that into the memory bank. Adesanya will throw a feint, see if you react. If you react, then he knows what's going to happen. He knows the way that you're wired. And then you got Paulo Costa just coming, walking you down, throwing 8 significant strikes per minute. So when it comes to the takedowns and whatnot, I don't think we're going to see much of any. We might see something different out of these two, but they're not really known for taking people down. Adesanya has been jokingly saying that I wouldn't be surprised if Paulo Costa took me down and took this fight to the ground. That might be the only chance that he has. I don't know. We've seen it before that when people in one discipline, so if it's like striking, then they turn into wrestlers when it comes to the fight. We've seen wrestlers turn into strikers. So we might see 2 strikers here turn into wrestlers. It seems like it always happens because at one point they become dead even when it comes to, one department, be it wrestling, striking, or whatever it is. And they might just switch it up. So that fight's going to be crazy. We're going to see if Adesanya is able to plan it out, if he's able to weather the storm that is Paulo Costa and hit Costa with calculated shots. And Paulo Costa, he's just going to go in, walking him down, hit him with those angry punches to the body. And yeah, this is going to be a spectacular fight. We also got the Dominick Reyes fight versus Blachowicz fight. Man, these stories of Blachowicz coming out about the noose that I guess he touches it every time he walks out. Man, it's a scary guy. The way that he knocked out Luke Rockhold, the power that he showed with knocking Luke Rockhold out like that was crazy. Dominick Reyes, he's got that rub from fighting the greatest of all time in this era, John Jones. Once you fight John Jones, you get this kind of like rub. It happens with a lot of champions. Whoever they fight, they end up being a lot better after because they know what kind of caliber that they have to be at before they can fight or before they can win in the division. We saw that with Henry Cejudo and Demetrius Johnson. After Demetrius Johnson first faced Henry Cejudo came back and totally switched up his style and the way that he fights because he knew that he could hang with the top dogs. He just knew that he had to make a couple of changes to his fight style and then he could win. So let's see if Dominick Reyes' fight with John Jones really affects him. A lot of people even think that Dominick Reyes won that fight. In my opinion, that was a super close fight. I mean, John Jones does have that championship caliber. And he's been in moments like that, but Dominick Reyes was putting it on him. And we'll see what happens when he fights John Blachowicz. A couple other fights on the card. Sijara Eubanks is always great to see her fight. And we got the Canadian Hakeem versus Zubaira. That's going to be a great fight. It's always great to see him back. He was coming off a long layoff. It's always great to see a Canadian on the card, and especially one that has a high capability like him. We'll see how he does against his opponent. Sometimes it's super hard to say these guys' names. So, yeah. So great fight card overall. We got a couple of good fights on the main card. I mean, when it comes to the prelims, we got Brad Riddell, fellow New Zealander, where he fights alongside Adesanya. We got Diego Sanchez with no slouch, Jake Matthews. That's going to be a super tough fight for Diego Sanchez. And then here we are. We got William Knight coming back in the light heavyweight division. Man, that's going to be a crazy fight as well. He always brings it. Or it seems like he brings it. He's always down to fight. Yeah, I mean, it's an all right card overall, but it's super top heavy. As you guys can see, the two top fights are the ones that we're going to be watching out for. Is the one that a lot of people are going to tune in for. Adesanya and Costa really are the backbone of this card, and they're the ones kind of holding it up. And all of this is happening on Fight Island. I almost forgot to talk about this. I always bring this up in my podcast now. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but I think it's a point that we really need to talk about. Forget about the ring size, forget about all that stuff. We need to talk about the time change and the weird times that these guys are fighting at. I was watching Dominick Reyes and Adesanya, Costa, all these guys doing interviews, and it was like 5 o'clock over here, so whatever time it was over there, and they're fighting at 6 a.m. and a whole bunch of weirdness going on. This time thing is really, I think it's really going to affect a lot of people. And think about it. Adesanya had to fly to Vegas and then take a flight to Abu Dhabi. So basically he's doing a crisscross, that's going to affect him. Those are super long flights. Like, he's got to fly there. He's got to do a quarantine. He's got to fly to Fight Island, do a quarantine there, do a bunch of interviews at weird times, and then fight at a weird time. He's talked about how he's fought in China at 2 a.m. and all this kind of stuff. But some of these things, they might not affect you when you're younger, but a couple of years later, age hits you like a ton of bricks. It might just hit you that, hey, okay, wait, I can't stay up this late, because I would totally understand if the UFC was like, okay, we're going to stick to North American timings, and then all the interviews would be on North American timings, and all the stuff, everything would be on North American timings. But all this switching around, they have all these fun events at Fight Island. Like, you can, I believe the race car thing is back, and all that other stuff is back. Driving the car around the racetrack and stuff, and all the great events. And then you got the video interviews and whatnot. All that stuff happens when they're technically supposed to be sleeping. So how is that going to affect them? I think the last time we were at Fight Island, most of the fighters just stuck to their original time. They stuck to our North American time. Obviously, people coming from all across the world, but they would just stick to North American time. But this stuff's really gotta. I don't see how it couldn't. I would put the cage size and all that kind of stuff at the bottom of the list. I would put the timings and all the interviews and all that kind of stuff to the top of the list in terms of stuff that's going to affect these fighters. And who knows, are we going to see the true versions of these fighters? Like, if these guys would have fought in Vegas, will we have seen a different version? I think so. I don't see how it wouldn't affect them. The flight alone. I keep on bringing this up. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just I'm the type of guy that flights really affect me, and time change really affects me. Maybe I'm harping on this too much. Let me know. But I really think this is going to be a big factor. And we'll see how these guys deal with it. I mean, there's nothing they can do about it now. They're already there. So, but it was great talking about this. It was great talking about this card. Fun, exciting, man, back-to-back. Exciting cards. We got the Woodley fight last weekend, and we got this Adesanya card Saturday, September 26th on Fight Island. It's great talking about this. Great talking to you guys about it. If you guys could like, 5 stars, subscribe on all the different platforms, that would really mean a lot, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon. This has been the Body Punch Podcast. My name is Nas. Bye.